Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time you happen to be watching this. I hope you're all having a pretty good day. I want to talk about several of Green's podcasts as they're recorded in the Anthropocene Reviewed, and just talk about things he did that you can think about if you're in my class for the cause and effect essay. And this is a hodgepodge. There's no order. I am just running through a bunch of quotations and how they might be a model for things you might want to do. As always, all borrowed images and quoted text are used for educational purposes. I'm just trying to keep within the spirit of giving people, credit, and I'm trying to, you know, show my students some examples. I'm not trying to make a buck. In Green's essay or podcast, Piggly Wiggly, he has several good examples of cause and effect paragraphs. He does a couple of things really well. First, he has some limits. Piggly Wiggly and the self service grocery stores that followed, they brought down prices. And because they brought down prices, there was more to eat. They also did other things. They changed the kinds of food. How did they do that? Or why did they do that? They wanted to save costs, they wanted to limit spoilage, so they stocked less fresh produce. The prepackaged foods became more expensive. It changed American diets. We've talked several times in class about how things can get strung together in a chain of events. And we listened to the Joe Diffie song, Chain of Events, or with the lines, Chain of Events. Here it is, I think, a whole list of chain of events, how Piggly Wiggly created, for lack of a better word, the shopping experience we sort of take for granted. The thing I think that you always have to wonder about, and the thing I want to remind you about, is it a correlation or is it a causation? Would processed foods have come into being for other reasons than the self service grocery stores? Would they have come into reason because of World War II and into existence because of the Korean War and World War II, perhaps? Um, what make sure that the link is clear. Just because they appeared in the United States within the decade of the first Piggly Wiggly opening doesn't mean that this was the sole cause. There could have been a lot of other things going on. So think through the whole thing and make sure it's cause and effect, not correlation. I'm not saying that Green is wrong. In fact, I'm pretty sure he's probably right. But make sure as you're writing, you do a good job of making the case that this is a cause, not a correlation. Next, I kept the same heading here, but I think in retrospect, I probably should have changed it. Keeping prices low and employing fewer clerks meant people who worked at traditional grocery stores lost their job, including my great grandfather. The personal twist was good. And then there's nothing new about our fear that automation and increased efficiency will deprive humans of work. I'm guessing that that's kind of a throwaway line, but I do think it's important to understand that there are always dozens of causes for people being unemployed. There are dozens of causes for our fear of automation. There are dozens of causes for our desire to increase efficiency. And there are dozens of causes for increased efficiency causing, unintended effects. Make sure that it's clear. Okay? Make sure that it's clear. For example, one of the reasons that self checkout happened is there weren't enough people to be clerks for a while. And then we had the pandemic where people didn't want a lot of human contact. So some places, even when they had limited grocery store hours and other things, you had fewer clerks, you had more self checkout. Make sure the correlation and the causation is firmly linked. And remember, caveats may be necessary. If you look at the blueprint, Clarence Saunders didn't make any of it happen. He was being pulled by forces larger than an individual. However, he understood what America was about to want, and he gave it to us. And apparently, what we wanted was highly processed foods like Oreos. And, we have the result now of poor diets, too much sugar, too much sodium, too many prepackaged foods. As we keep going, I do want to talk about the fact that I think Green, when he closes things up, does a great job of using all the tools. Piggly Wiggly swallowed up small town grocery stores. It was swallowed up by Walmart, which, if it's not Amazon, eventually Walmart will go away as well. Then he does a literary quotation, and then he makes social commentary. Big picture, big get bigger by eating the small, concrete example, literary quotation, comment on, big picture comment on American life in general. Use all of the tools. Use every one that's available to you, especially as you're trying to wrap things up, or especially as you're trying to get your reader interested in the essay. Remember when we talked about proximate causes and necessary causes and sufficient causes and precipitating causes? Think about those terms and how you can use those 6 different types of causes in your essay. So, for example, was the spaghetti legs a sufficient cause for the player to sky his shot over the crossbar? Or was it nerves? Was it fear? Was it the fact that the guy was tired? Make sure if you say something is a direct cause that it is sufficient to produce the effect, especially on the speculative essays that are part of the assignment. And the same thing with the Dudek thing. All right? Was the dancing, the jumping jacks, whatever the heck it was he was doing, was that sufficient? Or was it a situation where he had had the 2 great blocks before? What is it that makes this all work? Okay. What caused the miracle of Istanbul? There's a chain of events here. And I think Green puts a little too much emphasis on Dudek's dancing. So think about you as you write. Are you dealing with things that are sufficient? Are you dealing with the necessary elements? And remember, necessary and precipitating. Why did Dudek do what he did? As you take a look at things, remember that sometimes you have to set up what was going on. You have to set up the whole idea of Dudek. Why did he do it? Well, you've got Jamie Carragher coming to do that. And that still is not enough to explain why he listened to Carragher. So make sure that you have the necessary elements, make sure you have the precipitating elements, make sure it's complete. Make sure you explain why. And now I'm going to commit some philosophy without a license. Green also does that. He ends the Dudek one with "You can't see the future coming, not the terrors, and you also can't see the wonders." If you can get to the big picture, whether it's with the video games assignment, whether it's with the aliens, whether it's with AI, whatever it is, if you can get there, commit a little philosophy without a license. Think about the big picture. Think about the abstract and make it a bit more concrete for the rest of us. He also talks about the band the Mountain Goats. And he has this thing where it's a genuinely unconditional love. All of the songs are his favorites. And then he has a simple reason. His best friend, or a friend, Lindsey Robinson, played him the song "The Best Ever Death Metal Band Out of Denton." That little cause has the big effect as you're thinking through your essays. The social media one in particular. I think the alien one in particular. What's the small cause that can produce the big effect? It doesn't have to be big to get bigger. Small to get smaller would work fine. Again, overstatement is something that works. I don't know if it's overstatement that he thinks that the lyrics to the Mountain Goats songs are almost scriptural. But if they give him a guide to the life I want to live, that's pretty accurate. If you're going to go over the top, and I think with the utopia and dystopia and AI essay, it's entirely easy to go over the top. Don't forget to have the reasons. Green, once again, has a whole list of reasons for this to happen here. And despite that thing, I think it's important that overstatement, excuse me, despite my claim that it's okay to use overstatement, be judicious. I've told you to use all the tools earlier. I think I stand by that. But be careful with the tools. I've talked about ethos and logos and pathos. Please remember the idea of, especially your ethos depends on people being willing to believe you. And too much of anything, too much overstatement, too much understatement, too many grammatical mistakes, whatever it is, you start to lose your ethos. So, whichever tools you pull out of the box, make sure you're judicious in your usage of them. I'm going to wrap that one up right here. I hope everybody has a good day, and I hope to see you in class next class period.